My name is Haley, and I am 34 years old. I still remember the exact moment my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. It was 11 o'clock on Christmas Eve, and I was driving through a blizzard with my 7-year-old son Marcus in the back seat. He was clutching his old teddy bear, the one his father gave him before he passed away. Through my rearview mirror, I watched my childhood home disappear behind a curtain of falling snow. I never thought I would leave that house on Christmas night, but sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most become the ones who hurt you the deepest. Before I share what happened that night, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. If stories about family healing and finding your own strength speak to your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to join our community. Now let me take you back to where it all began. Because what my mother did, the Christmas Eve changed everything I believed about family. I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin, the kind of place where everybody knew everybody, and front porches were made for summer lemonade and long conversations. My father worked at the local manufacturing plant, putting in 12-hour shifts to make sure Christine and I had everything we needed. He was the kind of man who came home exhausted, but still found the energy to play catch with us in the backyard or read us bedtime stories until we fell asleep. When I was 14 years old, everything changed. There was an accident at the plant. A piece of heavy machinery malfunctioned, and my father was in the wrong place at the wrong time. I remember coming home from school that day, seeing my mother sitting on the kitchen floor, her face pale, and her eyes empty. She did not have to say anything. I already knew. After my father died, my mother Diane had to raise 2 daughters on her own. She was only 42 at the time, suddenly widowed with a mortgage to pay, and 2 teenage girls who needed her. I watched her transform from the warm, nurturing woman I had known into someone harder, someone who seemed to measure everything and everyone by what they could offer her in return. My older sister Christine was 4 years ahead of me, and from the moment my father passed, she became the golden child in my mother's eyes. Christine was everything my mother wanted in a daughter. She was beautiful with her perfect blonde hair and green eyes. She excelled in school, bringing home straight-A report cards that my mother would proudly display on the refrigerator. She was popular, always surrounded by friends, always knowing exactly what to say in every social situation. I was different. I was the quiet one, the dreamer who spent hours in my room drawing and painting. While Christine was being crowned homecoming queen, I was in the art room after school, covered in charcoal dust and lost in my own world. My mother never understood my passion for art. She would look at my drawings and say things like, "Why can you not focus on something practical or stop wasting your time with these doodles and study like your sister does?" The comparisons never stopped. Why can you not dress more like Christine? Why can you not smile more like Christine? Why can you not be more outgoing like Christine? Every sentence felt like a reminder that I was the lesser daughter, the one who did not quite measure up. When Christine graduated from college, she met Derek at a business conference. Derek came from money, the kind of old money that owned half the commercial real estate in the county. His family had a vacation home in the Hamptons and took ski trips to Aspen every winter. When Christine brought him home for the first time, I watched my mother's eyes light up in a way I had never seen before. This was everything she had ever wanted for her daughter, for herself by extension. Their wedding was a lavish affair paid for entirely by Derek's family. My mother wore a custom-made dress and spent the entire reception bragging to anyone who would listen about her wonderful son-in-law and the beautiful life her eldest daughter would have. I met James 2 years later. He was working as a mechanic at the auto shop where I took my car after it broke down on the highway. He had grease under his fingernails and the kindest eyes I had ever seen. He made me laugh when he noticed the paint stains on my jeans and asked if I was an artist. When I said yes, he smiled and said he could tell because I looked like someone who saw beauty in things other people overlooked. James did not come from money. He grew up in a trailer park on the other side of town, raised by a single mother who worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table. But he was honest and hardworking, and he looked at me like I was the most incredible person he had ever met. When he proposed with a modest ring he had saved up for over 8 months, I said yes without hesitation. My mother was not pleased. She pulled me aside the day after I told her about the engagement and said, "Haley, you are making a mistake. That boy has no future. He is a mechanic. He will never be able to give you the life you deserve. Why can you not find someone like Derek? Someone with ambition, with connections with money." I told her I loved James, that his character mattered more to me than his bank account. She shook her head and walked away, and I could feel the distance between us growing wider. James and I got married in a small ceremony at the courthouse. My mother came, but she sat in the back row and left immediately after the ceremony without congratulating us. Christine did not come at all. She was too busy with a charity gala that weekend, she said. Despite everything, James and I built a beautiful life together. We rented a small apartment, and I continued working as a receptionist while pursuing my art on the side. James worked long hours at the shop, and eventually he got promoted to head mechanic. When I got pregnant with Marcus, we cried happy tears together, imagining all the adventures we would have as a family. Marcus was born on a warm July morning, and the moment I held him in my arms, I understood what unconditional love truly meant. He had James's dark hair and my hazel eyes, and when he wrapped his tiny fingers around mine, I promised him that I would always protect him, that I would always make him feel loved and valued. For 7 years, we were happy. James was an incredible father, the kind who coached Marcus's little league team and never missed a school play. We did not have much money, but we had each other, and that was enough. Then James started coughing. At first we thought it was just a cold that would not go away. But the cough got worse, and then there was blood. And by the time the doctors found the tumor in his lung, it had already spread. James fought for 11 months. I held his hand through the chemotherapy, through the radiation, through the sleepless nights when the pain was so bad he could not stop shaking. Marcus would climb into the hospital bed and curl up next to his father, and James would stroke his hair and tell him stories about superheroes who never gave up. In the end, the cancer won. James died on a Tuesday afternoon in September with Marcus and me by his side. He squeezed my hand one last time and whispered, "Take care of our boy." And then he was gone. After James passed, I had to rebuild everything from scratch. I could not afford to stay in our apartment on just my salary, so I found a smaller place in a different city, about 4 hours away from my mother. I took a job as an administrative assistant during the day and worked part-time at a bakery in the evenings. Marcus was only 4 when he lost his father, and watching him grieve broke my heart all over again. The distance between me and my family grew even wider. My mother called occasionally, but our conversations were short and superficial. She would ask about Marcus briefly, before spending 30 minutes talking about Christine's kids, their private school achievements, their dance recitals, their vacations. Christine never called at all. For 2 years, I focused on survival. I worked, I took care of Marcus, and I slowly began to find my footing again. Then, as the holidays approached, Marcus started asking questions. He wanted to know about his grandmother, about his cousins, about the family he barely remembered. He asked if we could spend Christmas with them if he could finally have a big family holiday, like the ones he saw in movies. I hesitated. Part of me knew that going back to my mother's house was risky, that the old wounds had never fully healed. But another part of me wanted to believe that things could be different, that maybe my mother had softened over the years, that maybe this Christmas could be a new beginning. So I called my mother and asked if Marcus and I could come home for Christmas. She paused for a long moment before saying, "Sure, that would be fine." Her voice was not warm, but it was not cold either. I took it as a good sign. I spent the entire month of December saving money and shopping for gifts. Even though my budget was tight, I wanted to make a good impression. I bought my mother a beautiful cashmere scarf in her favorite shade of blue. I bought Christine a high-end skincare set that I knew she had been eyeing. For each of my nieces and nephew, I carefully selected thoughtful presents books about their interests, educational toys that I thought they would enjoy. Marcus was the most excited. He spent hours making a handmade Christmas card for his grandmother, decorating it with glitter and stickers, and writing in his careful 7-year-old handwriting. "I love you, Grandma. Merry Christmas." He could not wait to give it to her in person. The night before we left, I sat on Marcus's bed and watched him pack his favorite toys into his little backpack. "Mom," he said, his eyes bright with anticipation, "do you think Grandma will like my card?" I smiled and kissed his forehead. "She is going to love it," I told him. I believed it at the time. I really did. The drive to my mother's house took almost 5 hours because of the weather. Snow was falling steadily, and the roads were slick with ice. Marcus sat in the back seat, pressing his face against the window and watching the winter wonderland pass by. "Are we almost there?" he asked every 30 minutes. I smiled and played car games with him, trying to keep him entertained. We sang Christmas carols together, our voices filling the small car with warmth and joy. Despite my nerves, I felt hopeful. This was going to be a good Christmas. I could feel it. "Mom, do you think Grandma remembers me?" Marcus asked as we got closer. It had been 2 years since he had seen her in person. My mother had never made the effort to visit us, and with my work schedule and limited finances, I had not been able to make the trip either. "Of course she remembers you," I said, glancing at him in the rearview mirror. "How could anyone forget you? You are the best kid in the whole world." He grinned at that, satisfied with my answer. I hoped I was right. We arrived at my mother's house around 4 in the afternoon on Christmas Eve. The house looked exactly as I remembered it, a modest 2-story colonial with a wraparound porch and Christmas lights twinkling along the roofline. Smoke curled from the chimney, and through the front window, I could see the glow of a Christmas tree. I took a deep breath, grabbed our bags, and helped Marcus out of the car. His little hand found mine, and together we walked up the snowy path to the front door. I rang the doorbell, my heart beating faster than I wanted to admit. After a moment, I heard footsteps, and then the door swung open. My mother stood there in a red sweater and pearl earrings, her silver hair perfectly styled. She looked at me, then at Marcus, and her expression was hard to read. "Oh, she said you made it." Her eyes darted past us, scanning the driveway. "Just the 2 of you, then?" "Yes," I said, forcing a smile. "Just us." She stepped aside to let us in, giving me a brief perfunctory hug that lasted maybe 2 seconds. When Marcus ran toward her with his arms outstretched, shouting, "Grandma, I missed you," she patted his back a few times before pulling away and saying, Okay, come in, you are letting all the cold air in." I watched Marcus's face fall slightly, but he recovered quickly, still too excited to be dampened by her lukewarm reception. Inside the house was warm and beautifully decorated. Garland wrapped around the staircase railing, and candles flickered on every surface. In the living room, a massive Christmas tree dominated the space, easily 6.5 feet tall, covered in ornaments and tinsel and twinkling lights. But what caught my attention immediately was what was underneath the tree. Presents. Dozens and dozens of presents wrapped in expensive paper with elaborate bows and ribbons. They were stacked so high they almost reached the lowest branches. I heard the sound of children's laughter coming from upstairs, and a moment later, Christine appeared at the top of the staircase. She was wearing a cream-colored cashmere sweater and designer jeans, her blonde hair falling in perfect waves around her shoulders. "Oh," she said, looking down at us with an expression that bordered on disinterest. "You actually came." "Hi, Christine," I said, trying to keep my voice pleasant. "Merry Christmas." She descended the stairs slowly, not bothering to respond to my greeting. When she reached the bottom, she looked at Marcus and said, "You have gotten taller." Then she turned away without another word and walked into the kitchen. Marcus tugged at my sleeve. "Mom, where are my cousins?" Before I could answer, 3 children came thundering down the stairs. Emma was 12 now, tall and willowy like her mother. Sophia was 10 with braces and a perpetual scowl. Brandon was 8, only a year older than Marcus, clutching a handheld video game console. Marcus's face lit up when he saw them. "Hi," he said eagerly. "I am Marcus. Do you guys want to play?" The three of them looked at each other, then at Marcus. Emma whispered something to Sophia, and they both giggled. Brandon did not even look up from his game. They brushed past Marcus and disappeared into the den, sliding the door closed behind them. Marcus stood there in the hallway, his smile fading. He looked up at me, confusion in his eyes. "Mom, did I do something wrong?" I knelt down and wrapped my arms around him. "No, sweetheart. You did not do anything wrong. They just do not know you yet. Give them time." But even as I said the words, I felt a cold knot forming in my stomach. Something was wrong. I could feel it in the air, in the way my mother avoided looking at Marcus, in the way Christine acted like we were strangers who had wandered into her private party. I walked over to the Christmas tree and set down the bag of gifts I had brought. As I arranged them under the tree, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Every single present under that tree had a name tag. And every single name tag said Emma or Sophia or Brandon. Not one of them said Marcus. I counted quickly. There had to be at least 36 presents, all wrapped identically in elegant silver paper with red ribbons. 12 for each of Christine's children. And not a single one for my son. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe my mother kept Marcus's gifts somewhere else. Maybe she was planning to give them to him separately as a surprise. That had to be it. There was no way she would buy dozens of presents for 3 grandchildren and nothing for the 4th. Right. The Christmas Eve dinner was an elaborate affair. My mother had prepared all the traditional dishes: roasted turkey with herb stuffing, garlic mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, green bean casserole, and fresh-baked rolls. The dining room table was set with her best china crystal glasses and linen napkins folded into elaborate shapes. But the seating arrangement told me everything I needed to know about where Marcus and I stood in this family. There were 6 chairs at the main table arranged around the beautifully decorated centerpiece. My mother sat at the head. Christine sat to her right with Derek beside her. Emma, Sophia, and Brandon filled the remaining seats. For Marcus and me, there was a small card table set up in the corner, partially hidden behind a large potted plant, 2 folding chairs and paper napkins. I stared at the arrangement, my chest tightening. "Mom," I said quietly, approaching her as she brought out another dish from the kitchen. "Is there room for us at the main table?" She did not even look at me. "Oh, that table only seats 6. You understand, we will have plenty of chances to chat later, but there are 8 of us." I pointed out, struggling to keep my voice even. Derek spoke up, not looking away from his phone. "We have dinner reservations at the country club tomorrow. Christine and I will be there with the kids. You two can join Diane at the main table then, if it matters that much to you." Christine rolled her eyes. "Haley, do not make this into a thing. It is just dinner." I looked at Marcus, who was watching the exchange with wide, confused eyes. He did not fully understand what was happening, but he could sense the tension. He could see that we were being pushed aside. I led him to the small table in the corner and helped him into his seat. "We will have our own special dinner right here," I told him, forcing brightness into my voice. "Just the 2 of us. It will be fun." He nodded, but his enthusiasm from earlier had dimmed significantly. Throughout the meal, I watched my mother dote on Christine's children. She heaped extra portions onto their plates, complimented Emma's new hairstyle, asked Sophia about her ballet recital, and laughed at Brandon's jokes. She barely glanced in our direction. Christine and Derek dominated the conversation, talking about their recent trip to Italy, the renovations they were planning for their summer house, Derek's upcoming promotion at his family's real estate company. My mother hung on every word, nodding and smiling, and asking follow-up questions. At one point, I tried to join the conversation. "Actually, Marcus has been doing really well in school," I said during a brief lull. "He got the highest grade in his class on the last math test." My mother glanced at me, nodded briefly, then immediately turned back to Christine. "So tell me more about the trip to Florence." Did you visit that restaurant I recommended? Marcus looked at me, his little forehead creased with confusion. Mom, why does Grandma keep ignoring us? I did not have an answer for him. After dinner, Christine's children ran into the den to watch a movie while the adults cleaned up. I offered to help with the dishes, hoping for a chance to talk to my mother privately, but she waved me away. Christine and I have it handled. Why do not you go rest? Christine smirked at me over the sink and I felt my face flush with humiliation. I was being dismissed in my own childhood home, treated like an unwelcome guest rather than family. I found Marcus sitting alone in the living room, staring at the massive pile of presents under the tree. His eyes moved from gift to gift, searching for something. Mom, he said when I sat down next to him. I looked at all the presents. None of them have my name. My heart clenched. Maybe Grandma put yours somewhere special, I said, repeating the hopeful explanation I had been telling myself. Let us wait and see. Okay. He nodded, but I could see the disappointment already settling into his features. He was only 7 years old, but he was smart enough to understand that something was not right. Around 8 o'clock, my mother gathered everyone in the living room for the gift opening ceremony. It was a tradition in our family opening presents on Christmas Eve rather than Christmas morning. When I was little, my father used to dress up as Santa and hand out the gifts one by one. Now my mother sat in an armchair by the tree, reading the name tags and directing each present to its recipient. This one is for Emma, she announced, holding up an elaborately wrapped box. From Grandma with all my love. Emma tore into the package and squealed with delight. An iPad Pro. Oh my God, Grandma, this is amazing. My mother beamed with pride. Only the best for my granddaughter. The gifts kept coming. Designer clothes for Emma, a smartwatch for Sophia, Nike sneakers for Brandon that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, jewelry, electronics, toys, games. The 3 children were buried under a mountain of expensive presents. Marcus sat beside me on the couch, his eyes fixed on the tree, waiting for his name to be called. Every time my mother reached for a new gift, he sat up a little straighter, hope flickering across his face. But his name was never called. I counted as the presents were distributed. 12 for Emma, 12 for Sophia, 12 for Brandon. 36 gifts in total, each one carefully selected and expensively wrapped. When the last present had been opened and the wrapping paper littered the floor, Marcus looked at the empty space beneath the tree. Then he looked up at me, his eyes glistening with tears. He was trying desperately not to shed. Mom, he whispered, his voice so small, it nearly broke me. Did Grandma forget me? I could not speak. My throat had closed up completely. I pulled him into my arms and held him tight, feeling his small body tremble against mine. From across the room, I saw Christine's children comparing their hauls, arguing over who got the better gifts. I saw Derek scrolling through his phone, already bored with the proceedings. I saw Christine sipping champagne and laughing at something my mother said. And I saw my mother not looking at us, deliberately avoiding my gaze. Something inside me snapped. I gently released Marcus and told him to stay on the couch. Then I stood up and walked across the room to where my mother was sitting, still basking in the gratitude of her 3 favored grandchildren. Mom, I said, keeping my voice low but firm. Can I talk to you for a minute? She looked up at me with an expression of mild irritation, as if I were interrupting something important. What is it, Haley? Where are Marcus's gifts? She blinked, then turned back to watch Brandon unwrapping a backup video game console, because apparently one was not enough. What do you mean? I said through gritted teeth. You just gave 36 presents to Christine's children. Where are the presents for Marcus? My mother finally looked at me directly, and her expression sent a chill down my spine. It was not embarrassed or apologetic. It was cold, dismissive. I did not buy anything for him, she said simply. For a moment I thought I had misheard her. Excuse me, I said I did not buy him anything. She spoke slowly as if I were stupid. Is there a problem? Is there a problem? I felt my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. You bought 36 gifts for 3 grandchildren and nothing for the 4th. How is that not a problem? My mother sighed heavily, the sigh of someone who was being forced to explain something obvious to a slow learner. Haley, let me be honest with you. Christine lives 20 minutes away. Her children are here every weekend. I see them for birthdays, holidays, school events. I know them. I know what they like, what they need, what they are interested in. Marcus lives 4 hours away. I see him once every 2 years, if that. I do not know him. He is essentially a stranger to me. Why would I spend hundreds of dollars on presents for a child I barely know? I stared at her, unable to believe what I was hearing. He is your grandson. In name only, she shot back. You made the choice to move away. You made the choice to marry that mechanic instead of finding a decent husband. You made the choice to have a child you cannot properly provide for. Those were your decisions, Haley. Why should I be responsible for the consequences? Before I could respond, Christine appeared at my mother's side, her arms crossed over her chest, and a smug expression on her face. What is going on here, she asked, though her tone made it clear she already knew. Your sister is making a scene, my mother said. As usual. I turned to Christine. Did you know about this? Did you know Mom was not going to give Marcus anything? Christine shrugged. I do not keep track of Mom's gift-giving decisions. But honestly, Haley, what did you expect? You show up here once every blue moon and you want the same treatment as the rest of us. That is not how it works. The same treatment, I repeated, incredulously. We are talking about a 7-year-old child. Your nephew. He has been sitting there all night watching his cousins open present after present, waiting for his turn, and it never came. Do you have any idea how that feels? Christine rolled her eyes. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to isolate yourself from the family. You cannot just waltz in here once every few years and expect everyone to bend over backward to accommodate you. I felt the blood rushing to my face. I isolated myself. You have never once visited me. You have never called to check on Marcus after his father died. Neither of you have made any effort whatsoever to be part of his life, and now you are blaming me for the distance. My mother stood up from her chair, her face hardening. That is enough, Haley. You are embarrassing yourself. I am embarrassing myself. I was shaking now, my voice cracking with emotion. You just told me that you do not consider your own grandson family because I made choices you did not approve of. How is that my fault? How is any of this Marcus's fault? It is just how things are, my mother said coldly. You married down. You live paycheck to paycheck. Your husband died and left you with nothing. Christine made better choices, and her children benefit from those choices. Life is not fair. The sooner you accept that, the better off you will be. I felt like I had been slapped. All those years of feeling like I was not good enough, of trying to earn my mother's approval, of hoping that someday she would see me the way she saw Christine. All of it came crashing down in that moment. And then I heard a small voice behind me. Mom. I turned around and there was Marcus standing a few feet away, his handmade Christmas card clutched in his hand. He had been listening. He had heard everything. Is it true? He asked, his lower lip trembling. Does Grandma not love me because of Daddy? My mother had the decency to look uncomfortable for a split second before her face hardened again. She did not say anything. I knelt down and pulled Marcus into my arms, holding him as tightly as I could. No, baby, I whispered into his hair. None of this is because of Daddy. Daddy loved you more than anything in the world, and I love you more than anything in the world. This is not about you. This is not your fault. But Grandma said he started, and I could hear the confusion and pain in his voice. I looked up at my mother, at Christine, at Derek, who had not even bothered to put down his phone during this entire confrontation. I looked at this house that used to be my home, at these people who were supposed to be my family, and I made a decision. Marcus, I said, standing up and taking his hand. We are leaving. Oh, come on. Christine said with an exasperated sigh. "Do not be so dramatic. It is almost midnight. Where are you going to go?" I looked at her, and for the first time in my life, I did not feel small in her presence. I did not feel like the lesser sister, the one who could never measure up. "Anywhere," I said. "Anywhere but here." I took Marcus upstairs to the guest room where we had left our bags. My hands were shaking as I packed shoving clothes and toiletries into the suitcase without bothering to fold anything. Marcus helped putting his toys back into his backpack without being asked. "Mom," he said quietly as he zipped up his bag, "why does Grandma not like us?" I stopped what I was doing and sat down on the bed, pulling him onto my lap. I looked into his eyes, those beautiful hazel eyes that reminded me so much of James, and I tried to find the right words. "Grandma loves in a different way," I said carefully. "But her way of loving sometimes hurts people. And I will never let anyone hurt you, Marcus. Not even family." He nodded slowly, processing this in his own 7-year-old way. Then he said something that almost made me start crying right there. "It is okay, Mom. I have you. That is enough." I held him tight, breathing in the scent of his shampoo, feeling his heartbeat against mine. In that moment, I made a promise to myself. I would never again put Marcus in a situation where he felt unwanted. I would never again subject him to people who could not see his worth. I would be his family, his shelter, his everything, and that would have to be enough. When we came down the stairs with our bags, Christine was waiting at the bottom, her arms crossed. "You are seriously doing this," she said, "driving 4 hours in a snowstorm on Christmas Eve because Mom did not buy your kid a present." I stopped on the last step, looking her directly in the eye. "Christine, it is not about the present. It is about the fact that Marcus has been invisible to this family his entire life. It is about the fact that Mom just told a 7-year-old child that he does not count because of choices I made. Do you really not see how wrong that is?" For a moment, something flickered across Christine's face. Was it doubt, guilt? But it disappeared as quickly as it came. "You have always been so sensitive," she said, "always making everything about you. Maybe if you had made better choices, things would be different." I stepped past her without responding. There was nothing left to say. My mother was in the kitchen, her back to me. I paused in the doorway, my suitcase in one hand and Marcus's hand in the other. "Mom." She did not turn around. "I used to think I was not good enough for you," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "I used to think that if I just tried harder, worked harder, achieved more, maybe you would finally love me the way you love Christine. But I understand now. It was never about what I did or did not do. It was always about your choices, not mine." She still did not turn around, but I saw her shoulders stiffen. "I forgive you," I continued. "Not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to carry this bitterness with me for the rest of my life. But forgiveness does not mean I will let you hurt my son. From now on, Marcus and I will build our own family, one that values him, one that sees him." My mother finally spoke, still facing the window. "Drive safely." That was it. No apology, no attempt to stop me, just a dismissive farewell as cold and impersonal as a stranger on a bus. I walked out of that house with my head held high and my son's hand in mine. Outside, the snow was falling harder. The wind cut through my coat, and I could barely see the car through the white curtain of the blizzard. Any sane person would have stayed inside and waited for the storm to pass. But I was not willing to spend another minute under that roof. I buckled Marcus into his booster seat, tucking a blanket around him. He looked up at me with trusting eyes. "Are we going home?" he asked. "Yes, baby, we are going home." The drive was treacherous. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, leaning forward to peer through the windshield as the wipers fought a losing battle against the accumulating snow. I kept my speed well below the limit, my headlights barely cutting through the darkness. About an hour into the drive, I noticed Marcus had stopped asking questions. I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw him staring out the window, his breath fogging the glass. "You okay back there?" I asked. "Mom," he said thoughtfully, "when I grow up, can I have a family that is nice to everyone?" I felt tears prick at my eyes. "Yes, baby. When you grow up, you can have whatever kind of family you want. And you will be the best dad, because you know how important it is to make people feel loved." He seemed satisfied with that answer. He hugged his teddy bear closer and closed his eyes. I pulled off at a gas station around midnight to stretch my legs and calm my nerves. The place was mostly deserted, just me and a tired-looking attendant behind the counter. I bought 2 hot chocolates and brought them back to the car. Marcus perked up when he saw the steaming cups. "Hot chocolate," he exclaimed, as if it were the most wonderful thing in the world. We sat there in the parking lot sipping our drinks and watching the snow fall around us. The car was warm, the heater humming softly, and for the first time since we had arrived at my mother's house, I felt a sense of peace settling over me. "Mom," Marcus said between sips, "can we have our own Christmas, just you and me?" I smiled at him. "Of course we can. What do you want to do?" He thought about it for a moment. "Can we make pancakes in the morning and watch movies all day? And you can open the present. I made you at school." "That sounds perfect," I said. "Absolutely perfect." He grinned, his earlier sadness already beginning to fade. "Next year," he said decisively, "we should have Christmas with just us. It will be better." I reached back and squeezed his knee. "You know what, I think you are absolutely right." We made it home around 3 a.m. I carried a sleeping Marcus inside and tucked him into his bed, kissing his forehead and whispering that I loved him. Then I went to the living room and sat in the dark, too exhausted to move, but too wired to sleep. The apartment was quiet. Outside, the snow had stopped, and a pale moon cast silver light through the windows. I looked around at our small home, at the secondhand furniture, and the walls I had painted myself at Marcus's drawings, taped to the refrigerator, and the small Christmas tree we had decorated together. It was not much, but it was ours. I did not cry. I had expected to, but the tears would not come. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Relief. A weight had lifted from my shoulders, a burden I had been carrying for so long. I had forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. For 34 years, I had tried to earn my mother's love. I had shaped myself, shrunk myself, apologized for myself, and it had never been enough. It would never be enough. Because the problem was not me. It had never been me. That realization was both devastating and liberating. In the days that followed, my phone buzzed with messages from my mother and Christine. My mother's texts were curt and accusatory. "You embarrassed the entire family. You ruined Christmas. You always have to make everything about yourself." Christine's were worse. She wrote long, rambling messages about how ungrateful I was, how I had always been jealous of her success, how I needed to grow up and stop playing the victim. I read them once, then blocked both numbers. When I returned to work after the new year, my coworker Danielle immediately noticed that something was different. She cornered me in the break room, concern written all over her face. "What happened?" she asked. "You look like you have been through a war." I told her everything: the presents, the confrontation, the drive through the snowstorm, the decision to cut ties with my family. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she pulled me into a tight hug. "You did the right thing," she said firmly. "I know it does not feel like it right now, but you absolutely did the right thing. Your son needed to see that his mother would stand up for him. That is more important than any relationship with people who treat you both like second-class citizens." "But they are my family," I said. And for the first time since that night, I felt the tears starting to come. "Family is not just about blood," Danielle said gently. "Family is about the people who show up for you, who love you unconditionally, who treat you with respect. those people at your mother's house. They are not your family. They are just people who happen to share your DNA. She told me about her own experience with a toxic family, how she had spent years trying to maintain relationships with people who consistently made her feel worthless, how she had finally walked away and built a new life surrounded by friends who became her chosen family. It was the hardest thing I ever did, she admitted, but it was also the best thing. You cannot heal when you are constantly being wounded. I started seeing a therapist the following week. Her name was Dr. Patterson, a gentle woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes. In our sessions, I began to unpack years of emotional neglect and favoritism, to understand how being the unfavored child had shaped my self-esteem and my relationships. It is not your job to earn love, Dr. Patterson told me during one session. Love should be given freely. The fact that your mother attached conditions to her affection says everything about her and nothing about you. Slowly, I began to heal. I joined a support group for single parents, and I found a community of people who understood what it meant to raise a child alone. We organized play dates for our kids, potluck dinners, movie nights. Marcus made friends with other children, whose family situations were complicated kids who understood what it was like to not fit into the traditional mold. One of the mothers, a woman named Patricia, became a close friend. She had left an abusive marriage 3 years earlier and was raising twin daughters on her own. She understood isolation, she understood judgment, and she understood the fierce protective love of a mother who would do anything for her children. I have learned that family is a choice, she told me one evening as we watched our kids playing in the park. You can choose to keep toxic people in your life out of obligation, or you can choose to surround yourself with people who actually deserve your energy. It sounds simple, but it is one of the hardest lessons to learn. Marcus thrived in this new environment. He became more confident, more outgoing. He stopped asking about his grandmother and cousins. And when I gently brought it up one day, he just shrugged. I do not miss them, he said simply. They were not nice to us. I like our family better now. Our family. Those 2 words meant more to me than he could ever know. A year passed. Marcus turned 8, and we celebrated with a small party in our apartment. His friends from school came along with Danielle and Patricia and their kids. We had pizza and cake and played games until everyone was exhausted. It was not fancy, but it was full of love and laughter, and that was all that mattered. As December approached again, I felt a familiar knot of anxiety forming in my stomach. The holiday season would always carry complicated memories now, but I was determined to create new traditions, better traditions. Marcus and I went to a tree farm and picked out our own Christmas tree, a slightly crooked Douglas fir that we both agreed had character. We spent an entire weekend decorating the apartment, stringing lights along the windows, and hanging ornaments we had collected together over the years. This is the best Christmas ever, Marcus announced, as he placed the star on top of the tree. I smiled and pulled him into a hug, and we have not even started yet. A week before Christmas, an envelope arrived in the mail. I recognized my mother's handwriting immediately, and my heart rate spiked. I considered throwing it away unopened, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a brief letter written on my mother's formal stationery. Haley, it began. I have been doing some thinking since last Christmas. I may have been too harsh. I would like to see Marcus. The holidays are approaching, and it would be nice to have you both here. Please consider visiting. Mom. I read the letter 3 times, searching for an apology that was not there. She had been too harsh. She may have been too harsh. Not I was wrong. Not I am sorry. Just a vague acknowledgement that perhaps possibly she might have been slightly less than perfect. I sat down at my kitchen table with a pen and paper. I wrote a response that took me several hours to compose. Mom, I wrote, I appreciate you reaching out. It means something that you have been thinking about what happened. I forgive you truly. Not because what happened was okay, but because I refused to carry anger and resentment into the future. However, forgiveness does not mean I am ready to put Marcus back into a situation where he might be hurt again. Trust has to be rebuilt slowly with consistent actions over time. Right now, we are building our own traditions and our own sense of family. The door is not closed forever, but I need to see real change, not just words, before I can consider bringing Marcus back into that environment. I hope you understand. Haley. I sealed the envelope but did not mail it. I put it in a drawer where it sat for weeks. Maybe I would send it someday. Maybe I would not. But writing it had been cathartic. It helped me clarify my own feelings and boundaries. On Christmas Eve, Marcus and I attended a candlelight service at a small church downtown. I was not particularly religious, but the atmosphere was peaceful, and Marcus loved singing the carols. Afterward, we walked home through streets decorated with twinkling lights, our breathmaking clouds in the cold air. Mom Marcus said as we walked, "Do you think Dad can see us from heaven?" I squeezed his hand. "I think so. I think he is always watching over us." Marcus smiled. "I hope he knows we are happy." I knelt down in the snow right there on the sidewalk and looked into his eyes. "He knows, baby, and he is so proud of you. We both are. You are the bravest, kindest, most wonderful person I have ever known." He threw his arms around my neck. "I love you, Mom. I love you too, Marcus. More than all the stars in the sky." When we got home, I made hot chocolate, and we watched Marcus's favorite Christmas movie. Halfway through, he fell asleep with his head on my lap, and I sat there in the soft glow of the Christmas tree lights, feeling more at peace than I had in years. The next morning, Christmas Day, Marcus woke me up at dawn, bouncing on my bed with excitement. "Mom, wake up, Santa came." I groggily followed him to the living room where a small pile of presents waited under the tree. They were not expensive gifts, not iPads or designer clothes, but they were chosen with love. A remote-controlled car he had been eyeing for months, a set of art supplies because he had started showing interest in drawing just like I had at his age, new books about space and dinosaurs, a warm winter coat with his favorite superhero on the back. He tore into the presents with genuine joy, exclaiming over each one, as if it were the most wonderful thing he had ever seen. And then he ran to his room and came back with a small wrapped package. "I made this for you at school," he said shyly. "I have been saving it." I opened it carefully. Inside was a handmade ornament, a clay heart painted in messy strokes of red and pink. On one side, in his careful handwriting, it said, "Mom and Marcus forever." I pulled him into my arms and held him close, tears streaming down my face. "This is the best present I have ever received," I told him honestly. "I will treasure it forever." We spent the rest of the day exactly as he had wanted, making pancakes for breakfast, watching movies all afternoon, building a blanket fort in the living room. Danielle stopped by with her kids in the evening, and we had a chaotic, noisy, wonderful dinner together. As I looked around the table at the people who had become my chosen family, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. This was what family was supposed to be. Not obligation or manipulation or conditional love. Just people who showed up for each other, who lifted each other up, who made each other feel valued and seen. I thought about my mother and Christine, probably having their own Christmas 4 hours away, surrounded by expensive presents and perfect decorations. I wondered if they ever thought about us, if they ever felt any regret. And then I realized it did not matter. I had spent too many years seeking approval from people who would never give it. I had wasted too much energy trying to fit into a mold that was never meant for me. Now finally, I was free. That night, after everyone had gone home and Marcus was asleep in his bed, I stood by the window and looked out at the snow-covered street. The Christmas lights on the houses twinkled like earthbound stars, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear carolers singing. I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the pain of losing my father, the loneliness of being the unfavored child, the joy of finding James, the devastation of losing him, the fierce protective love I felt for Marcus, the courage it had taken to walk away from my mother's house on that snowy Christmas Eve. Every experience, good and bad, had shaped me into the person I was now, and I liked that person. I was proud of her. Family is not defined by blood. It is defined by love. It is defined by the people who choose to stand beside you, who celebrate your victories and comfort you in your defeats, who see you for who you truly are and love you anyway. I had lost my birth family in many ways, but I had gained something more precious in return. A family built on mutual respect and genuine affection. A family where Marcus and I were not afterthoughts or inconveniences, but the center of our own story. If you are watching this, and you have ever felt unseen or unvalued by the people who were supposed to love you most, I want you to know something. It is not your fault. You are worthy of love, exactly as you are. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who cannot see your worth. It does not mean you are giving up on family. It means you are making space for the family you deserve. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had to set boundaries with someone you love? Have you ever had to choose your own well-being over a toxic relationship? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. This community is a space for sharing and supporting each other. So please know that you are not alone. If this story resonated with you, I would be so grateful if you would hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Every like and subscription helps these stories reach more people who might need to hear them. And if you know someone who might benefit from this message, please share it with them. You never know whose life you might touch. Thank you for being here with me today, for listening to my story with open hearts. Whatever your family situation looks like, I hope you find the love and acceptance you deserve. And I hope this holiday season brings you peace, joy, and the company of people who truly value you. Take care of yourselves and each other, and remember you are always enough, always.